Okay, so I guess this would be it, my review of the Nexus 5X, and I want to get one thing out of the way right away from the start. I did bash the 5X a lot because of only 2 GB of RAM and just 32 GB as a max version for the storage, but I also on social media said I still want to review it, and if anything changes and if I'm wrong, I will admit that. And I was. I will admit that just right out of the way as a spoiler. This device is much better than I initially expected it to be. How great it actually is, we'll see in my full review just right now. Okay, so here it is, the Nexus 5X, and as always a size comparison here with still my Z3. As you can see, pretty much the same height, pretty much the same width, just a tad thicker, but it actually still feels a little bit bigger because the Z3 has these curves, and I've seen this on so many LG devices, and that's why I'm a little bit disappointed they didn't include that here, because as you can see, it gets a little bit wider towards the back. This means you will feel more of the width actually in your hand, so I would have definitely wished for a curve towards the back that would have made the device feel even more so compact. Yes, it can be really securely held in the hand, which is definitely nice. It won't slip out of hand, it's very nice to hold here with the almost parallel sides, and that is nice, but I would have still wished for something more organic, a little bit smoother here as well on the backing, where we have this quite harsh edge actually that feels a little bit odd. You can get used to it, of course, no problem here, but I would have wished just for more curves. Otherwise, one hand use was quite okay. It was a little bit hard to reach the upper side, but it works out okay since I still have my gestures, for example here, to get down to the shade. So that is all done. One hand usability was absolutely fine, so no problems here. As for the back, everyone says it's the same back as on the Nexus 5, and I absolutely can't agree because I didn't like the 5X back at all. But I have no problem here with this. It's very, very similar, I agree, but it's a little bit smoother and doesn't have this quite odd potato feel that the 5 had. The 5X definitely feels better here in terms of that. It's also a little bit grippier, maybe not super grippery, but it's still absolutely fine, and I like it definitely better than the 5. Here we have the fingerprint reader, I will get to a little bit later. The camera, the dual tone flash, the laser autofocus. On the top we only have the microphone. On the left side the SIM card tray. On the bottom we can see the USB Type-C, another microphone, and the headphone jack. On the front we have a status LED here, or a notification LED beneath the speaker, which is really nice. It's like actually quite nice to see, quite easy. Here we have the speaker again, which is no speaker, just for the earpiece, and another camera. In terms of bezels, I would have wished for a little bit less. And one thing that I'm not the biggest fan, but it's also not really an issue, we have this little border here. And I would have definitely wished to have seen like a 2.5D glass to cover around, because you feel this gap. It's not bad or something like that, it's just a personal preference. In terms of buttons, I still think they should have switched it, because I'm not sure how many times I actually hit the volume up to try to turn the device on, but you always have to slightly inconveniently get a little bit higher, which is okay because most people will just use the fingerprint reader. And no, I won't show it off because there are thousands of videos on the internet showing that off. I can already tell you it is fast, but it's not quick, because for example the Huawei Mate S is a lot quicker. It's totally fine, it's a little bit of a delay, but it's fine, and I personally did disable it anyways, because for me it's just an inconvenience. For me it's not a natural position, because everyone says this is natural position, but if you unlock it like this, so how should I move the device now? If I would have held it like this, then my finger is somewhere like here. So for me it's just not the one. And you also have ambient display, which is a nice get around, so you don't have to use the power button, but I didn't like that so much either. So that's it for the design. I've talked a little bit too much for it. I gotta say, it's built quite nice. It definitely doesn't feel cheap or anything like that, but the ergonomics and the design could have been a bit better in my opinion. So now about the display. 1080p 5.2 inches, it's an IPS display. Sharpness is actually fine, absolutely no problem, should be still fine. Of course we have more impressive displays with QHD these days, but it's still absolutely fine. The white point is nice, just ever so slightly on the warmer side, but will please everyone, no doubts here. Of course it's an IPS, so we only have IPS blacks, which is nothing bad, but also just nothing spectacular. It could have been a little bit deeper, but I'm actually still fine with it. So the colors, they could sometimes seem a little bit washed out, maybe because it's quite a natural and accurate display, but most people are known or used to more vibrant displays these days. So it could sometimes feel a little bit like it is washed out, but it actually is quite fine. Viewing angles as well. It always on the camera looks a little bit different, but it's fine. The maximum brightness though isn't really the very best one. It should be okay in brighter sunlight, but it didn't really blow me away. And one thing that I have to say about the display, it's a very high-end display and it's a really nice one. But what I also noticed is this, and I made a specific video for that, there is this motion blur while scrolling that I noticed here more than on other devices. Just check that video. But I gotta say, the display is really, really nice, really good. It doesn't have any real flaws, but except of the motion blur, it only just can't impress. It's just not impressive these days. It's super solid, flawless, but just not impressive. Now, the sound. So yeah, we have front facing, but just on the lower side, which isn't the issue because the position itself is still great. It feels a little bit of a narrow sound stage, but what I'm not that happy with, the sound is a little bit flat, a little bit on the weaker side. We don't really have any bass. The mids are a little bit on the weaker side, and the highs are actually, yeah, they are clear but a little bit harsh from time to time. But my main issue here is the maximum volume. I would have just wished for a little bit more. It's still nice. It's an overall good speaker, but it's definitely not great anymore. There are so many better solutions out there. And my main issue, once again, is the maximum volume. The sound is quite weak, but would have gotten the job done. So that's not the issue. Now let's get to the performance. And here I can already tell you that I'm absolutely pleased. As you can see here, the scrolling within Chrome, absolutely nice, absolutely buttery smooth. There are not really many devices that can do it better. Here, for example, as well, Phoenix, absolutely buttery smooth. Let's try that one here as well. There is some lag if you maybe enter the app, but once it just starts to scroll, as you can see here, absolutely satisfying. And even G Plus did quite a nice job here, as we can see. Absolutely fine. This is absolutely totally fine. And I did complain one thing about the performance here, and that was the multitasking. I said 2 GB of RAM just isn't enough, and I gotta say, in normal use, it absolutely is enough. It's okay, it gets the job done absolutely fine, but if you put on some heavier load, for example, have some stream in the background running, maybe GPS on, and jump through heavier apps, then you will notice that it has some trouble sometimes getting through it. It's not a huge issue for most people. I guess only the power users that run some really extensive apps will get into trouble here, but otherwise you should be actually fine. I'm not quite so sure how future-proof that is, but I'm really pleased actually with the performance, and the same goes actually also for the gaming performance, because this is definitely the best 808 device in terms of performance that I had. I reviewed the Moto X Play and also the G4, and I gotta say, in overall, this is definitely quite noticeably the better performer, as well as in games as in for apps and everything. Everything is just a tad smoother, everything just reacts a little bit faster and nicer. So overall, I gotta say, the performance package is absolutely nice. It's not quite super flagship level. It's not on an A10 level, it's not on an Exylos level, and it's not on a Kirin 935 level, but it should satisfy pretty much everyone who doesn't need the very, very best performance. And I gotta say, the 2 GB of RAM are way less of an issue than I expected it to be. Now, in terms of battery life, about 1 hour and 35 for a full charge, which is totally fine. No real issues here. It's not quite as fast as Quick Charge 2.0, but it's still absolutely fine. Now, battery life, I gotta say here, 3 hours and 50 over the course of slightly over a day. One day, 4 hours and 15. Slightly above that, 15 hours. 4 hours over the course of one day, 3.5 about almost 2 days, almost 4 over the course of one day. So as you can see, I would say definitely expect about over the course of one day, solid 4 hours, if not even a little bit more, and over the course of 2, maybe 3.5, which is absolutely fine. And I think the battery life is actually decent, and standby drain was nice on Wi-Fi. On mobile data, those, for example, didn't work so well for me because then I had like a percentage drain per hour. Not quite so sure. On Wi-Fi, it really was great and nothing to complain here. So the battery life is actually decent and way better than I expected it to be. But I also have to say I thought the same for the Nexus 5 2 years ago, and then I noticed, yeah, the battery went down the drain quite early. I hope this won't happen on the 5X. So now about the software. The great thing is, this time we can finally rearrange the settings and you can delete them, but you will have to use the system tuner for that. I'm not quite so sure how many people know about that, except of the power users, they will know. Other than that, we have the newest software, which we will always have with 6.0.1. And I won't really go into detail because it's barebone, it's minimal, it's stock Android. So I'm pretty sure you know it, you have seen it already a few times. There is not much to talk about. I would wish for a few minor tweaks, for example, like the navbar and so many minor things. But for the average user, you should get pretty much everything you would expect. And since it's a Nexus device, you will have the best possible custom ROM support anyways. So you can tweak it. You will have so many options here to tinker with things, customize and all that. So the average user should be fine because he gets a very clean, fast, and still quite efficient system. If you want some minor tweaks, you will get them. But if you are a custom ROMer, then it's still the best option out there. You will get custom ROMs without any ends, and that's it pretty much for the software. Now about the camera, I have to say I'm more than just pleased. I am very, very impressed with the camera, and on my Best of Awards of 2015, I actually even gave it number 2, because one thing that I like the camera so much about is the fact that I can get great results without any effort. Because actually, if you have a good lighting already and you do tap to focus, it did actually overexpose the picture. So you don't even need to do that, and this is great. You just point, shoot, and you get almost all the time a really great outcome. Pictures were very, very sharp, great autofocus, very natural. Everything was absolutely fine. Low light situations, then tap to focus did improve because it did lighten up the picture a bit. It got a little bit noisy, but still absolutely fine. So low light is okay as well. And maybe the highlight for me at least here is the video quality, because very, very smooth transitions in terms of the exposure. If it gets too bright and then to darker situations, a really nice transition from landscape view to a macro shot. All that has been so much nicer done, and it's so smooth. And like I said, you can get so great results with pretty much no effort. If you want though to have more manual controls, then you are a little bit more limited here. But overall, I absolutely like this camera, and I think it's just slightly below maybe the the Note 5 if you want to get great effortless shots. But on the Note 5 you have a little bit more manual control afterwards. So I guess that's it for the detailed part. So I'm still doing my one shot only week, or it's by the end of the year, and so I have to make this take count. As always, recap now, design and build quality. I gotta say they didn't do much wrong in terms of build quality, because it actually feels quite substantial enough, a little bit too light, but for me personally it's a little bit too edgy. The buttons could be a little bit different. In overall it still feels good, but they had a few chances to make it feel great, especially since it's built by LG, and LG did build the LG4 that feels so smooth and comfortable in the hand. And if I would have seen this here, I would have gave it even more praise. But as it is, it's totally fine. It's not built cheap, and it's still quite compact enough for everything else. So it's definitely a very good alternative for a normal sized phone, still despite everything. Now the display, to make it quick, it's just not an impressive screen. That's pretty much its only weakness, because it doesn't have any flaws. It's bright enough in most cases, colors are very nice and accurate, maybe could seem undersaturated for people who are used to more saturated colors. Colors are nice, black is okay, the white point is good, so everything is very, very good. But with all those QHD screens from Samsung, Huawei and everything else, it just can't stand out anymore. But it's absolutely fine, and it gets the job just done brilliantly, no problems here at all. The sound, not quite so much. I would have wished for a little bit more of a richer, fuller sound, because it sounds quite weak, not maybe tinny, but just weak. especially mids and highs. I mean the bass, because highs are a little bit on the harsher side, and you will notice this for gaming. Then it felt, especially if you block it with your hand, it kind of reflected, felt even more so harsh. And the maximum volume is my main gripe. It does the job in most cases quite okay in a quite easier or not so loud environment. It's totally fine, but yeah. And front stereo would have been even better, so I'm not quite sure why they didn't go for that. In terms of performance though, everything is absolutely top. It is very smooth, and this Nexus smoothness has something that no other device can achieve, and I've only seen this on Nexus device so far. It just is super buttery smooth. Yes, with those smoothness though, also this motion blur comes in. I'm not quite sure what to blame, if it's the display, if it's something about the software or anything else, but it's noticeable, not for everyone, and most people don't care, so that's not a huge issue. But app loading times were fine. Jumping through apps was also fine. Multitasking, yes, if you do some heavy stuff, will get a little bit bogged down, and sometimes it's things like, hey, what's going on? What should I do? Wait a second. And then it reacts. But this is in normal use, never the case for me, and I really didn't have an issue with that. So in terms of performance, it gets my okay. Not the very, very best performance, but it beats even some nicer flagships, like for example the Moto X Pure or the G4. This felt just a tiny little tad better in overall. Battery life actually quite decent. I easily reached almost every time 4 hours, sometimes like 4:15, 4:20 over the course of more than one day. So battery life is actually quite decent, not quite great, but far from disappointing as it was before. So totally gives my okay, no problems here at all. Now, software, what should I say? It's a Nexus. It's stock Android, which I almost always say not enough for me. But it doesn't have to, because everyone who wants stock, wants the clean minimal experience, he gets it. But for people like me, we have a Nexus for custom ROMs, we have it for root, and that's why we love it so much, and that's pretty much the biggest highlight for me in terms of software. Not what we get, but what we can get by using the XDA or any other custom ROM support. And then you will get an even better experience if you are a power user, but the average user will get what he wants as well. So quite great balance. Now the last thing to talk about, the camera, which I was more than impressed. And I was already fine with the camera on the Nexus 6 last year, but this time it really blew me away, because I never saw such a nice, easy to get results, because you didn't have to do anything, just point and shoot, and it pretty much all the time super sharp, great exposure, great autofocus and everything, all that. Same goes for videos with this super smooth, and I talked about this in my best of video, how much I like the transition from a bright to dark environment, and that's just overall. So I think it's pretty obvious. If you saw my best of 2015 devices, this got my award for best phone of 2015, and I'm talking about phones, not phablets. And I think it's pretty much still the best phone you can get this year as an overall package. It isn't maybe the best in anything, but as a whole package, it just doesn't do anything really wrong. Everything is still on a very high level. And one thing that I also complained is the value here, because if you buy it here in Germany over Google Play, it costs 530, but the good thing is on local dealers and so on online shops, you can get it for 430. And then the value is already a lot better. It's still a little bit too high, because if it would have been something closer to 350, then I would have said there is no alternative. This is the one to go for. For 430, there are definitely alternatives like the Moto X Play, like the G4. Personally, since I prefer the smaller phones, I give it my total go, and I have to say, it's, like I said in my intro, much better than I expected, but still not quite as great as I wanted it to be. But of course, therefore, the Nexus 6P is there, and this is the slightly smaller, slightly watered down brother. And if you don't need the highest bells and whistles and want to save a little bit money and want the smaller phone, this is actually a really good choice. And I have nothing more to add. I have done that. If you have any questions or something to say, leave that in the comments. If you liked it, give it a like. If you didn't, then don't. And if you want more videos like this, then just subscribe to my channel. And I wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye. And for Dean Wallace, I'll be back.